Hello, Tolkien geeks, and welcome back to Voice of Geekdom. I'm your host, Dan, and with me today is my co-host, the face that launched 1,000 ships, Helen from the Clueless Fangirl YouTube channel. And we're joined today by a special guest, Clifford Quickbeam Broadway from theonering.net, the hastiest ent in Fangorn Forest.
Oh, so
Cliff,
hasty.
welcome to the show.
Hello,
welcome. You seem very unhasty to me. I don't know you very well yet, but you don't seem like the hastiest ent, actually.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess there's something about using a nickname that we started on theonering.net 20 years ago, and I don't suppose it's really the internet fashion anymore. But back in the day, before we had all of these platforms that we're using now, people were using an IRC chat, and other message boards. And the idea was to identify yourself with, some catchy name and a goofy little avatar. And I was one of the few people who literally decided I'm going to take myself as a Tolkien character. And since I'm always Mr. Botanist, and I'm the guy who's always paying attention to the trees in the neighborhood and making sure that they don't get trimmed too heavily by the orcs. I mean, the gardeners. And, that's ended up being Quickbeam. Maybe I have slowed down a little bit as I've gotten a little bit wiser and older, maybe.
No, you're not that old in ent years, I don't think. But
Not at all. Not at all. I wonder if we're going to ever see maybe someday, on some TV show, maybe some adaptation somewhere, where we get to see this relationship between the elves and how they started it all with the trees. I'd like to see that someday, really.
That would certainly be interesting. Silmarillion adaptation. I want to get into that topic a little bit later on, actually, because that would be an interesting conversation to have. But thank you for appearing on the show. And I wanted to start out by asking you just basically, how did you get involved in the Tolkien fandom, and how did you get involved in the onering.net, and how has your role changed there over time as well? Because you talked about forums, and that's how the One Ring started. That's how I know it from back in the day. I remember the One Ring from the early days of the internet. I was a teenager when the movies were a bit in development and were released. I was a very nerdy teenager that used to go to the library at lunchtimes and used to look at the One Ring forums. I was what they call what do they call it? Somebody who lurks, a lurker.
A lurker, yes.
Yeah. So I
invited Dan to YouTube.
Yeah, I was a lurker on your channel, actually, wasn't I, in a way?
I love it.
Helen, my co-host, has her own channel as well, as you know, and I used to comment on her videos. That's not lurking, though. That's commenting. A lurker is somebody who just reads.
Yeah, but I knew from the beginning, okay, he kind of knows, because a lot of people are always like, they want third age content, and my channel is completely about the Silmarillion and the first and second age, or the ages before, right? And I found it fascinating that somebody understood what I was talking about, because obviously sometimes people watch it and they're like, what is this woman talking about? The two trees of Valinor? Where's Valinor? What is Valinor? And it was cool that Dan understood what I was talking about.
So that's our origin story, anyway. But
that's wonderful.
I wanted to start out with just asking you, how did you get involved with the One Ring?
Sure. Well, I want to say thank you so much. It is an absolute pleasure, and I genuinely mean that, because being invited to share more conversations and to broaden the scope of our understanding of J.R.R. Tolkien is what it's all about for me. And I'm kind of just delighted that after all these years, the energy with the fandom and the level of intelligence and the level of creativity that's still coming in it really has never, ever gone away. And we are 20 years away, almost, well, maybe 19 years away from when Fellowship of the Ring first came out. And if you go way, way, way back to 1954, that's how far away we are from the publishing of the Fellowship of the Ring. 1954. And look at where we are now at 2021, and the energy, the uplift within the fan community it's delicious. It's wonderful.
And the
Wonderful to be here.
generations that are, hopping on that train. And it's not just because of the show. It's like, I learned it from my father. My father, kind of passed it on to me, the books and the love for Tolkien. And this is what we do now with our children. So that's really, it's timeless and beautiful.
It is. It is. I agree. It's wonderful. And that's something that I've examined. In fact, that's really one of the things that I've most dedicated myself to examining in my work. And let me just answer your question real quickly. Many years ago, when this ancient planet was not quite so ancient, that's a line from the 1977 Hobbit cartoon. Thank you.
Many ages ago, when this ancient planet was not quite so ancient, long before man recorded his history.
There's a little website that was called McKellen.com. And it was Ian. Ian was busy, very busy, working on an Oscar campaign for Best Actor for Gods and Monsters, which was an extraordinary feature film that he did years before Peter Jackson and him sat down to do the Gandalf conversation. And I got hired to work for Ian McKellen. So I was working at McKellen.com, and theonering.net started up, and they said, we're looking for very vigorous writers who would like to write and provide analysis and support for this new community. And I said, let me throw my hat in the ring, because not only can I provide analysis and my expertise, but I can also sneak in little bits of secret side information from Ian. At that point in time, when I started, I really didn't know things were going to come together in such a strange and remarkable synthesis. I had no idea. So I was working as a writer, and I was providing content with a big group who were doing an online magazine, or what we would call at the time the Green Books. And it was a study group where our most learned people that we had, who were all volunteers, and a secret person who was within the world of Tolkien publishing. And he is forever to remain nameless. I will never, ever, ever reveal his real identity. He used a nickname as well. And we all started writing articles and taking in questions and answers. We got an email running, and millions of questions came to us, and we did our best to research them and write little answers for them, for all the fans, to support all the energy that was going on the message boards and at Barlaman's chat. Because the big feature at the time was Barlaman's chat room, where we had the IRC chat running. And there it is. That's the beginning of the OneRing.net. And just to quickly examine how my role has changed over the years, I started off trying to sneak in little photographs and little anonymous bits of information and not get Sir Ian in trouble. I did not want to get him in trouble with Gordon Pattison, the marketing director at New Line Cinema. I did not want to get Ian in trouble, but I wanted to provide the little bits of scoops that I could. And then we got into making a documentary film, and the OneRing.net helped get us, by association with them, we got some investors to come and help us make a little documentary examining the legacy. Helen, you were so correct to say this is intriguing, isn't it? That we pass this book down generation by generation to children, as my parents did with me, as we all do. So I made a documentary called Ringer's Lord of the Fans, and we got Dominic Monaghan to come on board and be our narrator, and then we got the film distributed. So things just started to get bigger and bigger as time went on, and then it became a project within a project. The One Ring wanted to host local events for all the fandom, to go to a line party, standing in line outside the theater for the Return of the King, or doing local conventions. And we developed conventions and shows. And then there were the Oscar parties where we invited Peter Jackson's cast and crew to come and hang out with the fans instead of going to, the governor's ball. We actually got to have fans hang out with at their own event. So we were just trying to create.
And so, how did that relationship
strata
develop? Because you had that relationship initially with Sirian, but you became kind of very entrenched with the Peter Jackson people in general. I mean, that relationship developed over time, didn't it? And it became legitimized, as the best word I can use for it, I think. How did that happen?
That happened because Warner Brothers was making some obvious and loud mistakes with the fandom for Harry Potter. And they were doing things that were creating difficult PR problems for them. There was a little 12-year-old girl who had a Harry Potter fan website, and the lawyers at Warner Brothers slapped her with a cease and desist letter. Mm-hmm. And the blowback against their behavior towards fandom was really hard. There were other people working at New Line Cinema who had the wheels going in their skull a little bit better than Warner Brothers. And they decided not to poison the well. They wanted to reach out to fandom. And because the OneRing.net was all volunteer and always has been just a bunch of fans volunteering their time, there was no exchange of any money or any payback or any payola or anything like that. But getting entrenched with that moment in time with New Line Cinema was par for the course because it was the only game in town. Everybody was talking about, wow, look at the book sales. The sales of books are climbing up the bestsellers charts. Why? Because of the pop culture energy and popular culture having a larger response to Tolkien because of the movies. And so the synthesis was there.
To Game of Thrones, right? This is literally what happened years later with the Game of Thrones community and with The Witcher. Look at literally the Witcher books were sold out when the show came out on Netflix. It's and it's like these books, as you said, from the 50s. A 12-year-old or 16-year-old, grab the books, which are 60, 70 years old. And that's even more fantastic, I think, than, what happened because A Song of Ice and Fire books are more modern, we know Martin loves Tolkien, but he also criticizes him. And he's, kind of the modern Tolkien who has sex, violence, politics, all that in his books, but the basics are the same. Sorry.
No, indeed. You're correct. Absolutely. Exactly. The relationship with the fandom became important. New Line Cinema did not want to repeat the mistakes that other studios were doing. Mm-hmm. And they, and we're at that period now where Amazon Studios is now just starting to figure out the pieces of the puzzle to competently and very generously reach out to the fan community instead of pushing them off into an area of a vacuum where they know nothing and they can learn nothing. And that might be one of the main ingredients that ended up bringing us to where I was writing that article about sex and sensibility, which I'm sure I have been properly dragged for by other fans, and that's great. That's fine too. Let's get right into that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's
because
do that. Okay.
It came from that place. We were nowhere near understanding the elements in front of us. And
we
the
still
elements
are, and that's my argument. I mean, this is what I said last time on my podcast. I had a few guests on, as you know, and I just, for the record, so that my people know and the viewers know, I invited you to be a part of that panel too, but because it was so close to Christmas, we weren't able to match schedules on that, which was regrettable because I knew that I would bring up this issue. But we did talk last time on the show about sex and nudity in the Amazon Prime adaptation, and I had a few kind of criticisms that were fairly measured, I think, about some of the coverage that you guys put out there. there's been reporting on this for some time now, and this isn't an attack on anyone specifically, but a lot of this did come out from the One Ring originally, and I have no particular sort of agenda here. I like the One Ring in general. I think they do a good job of representing the fandom, but I was a little bit dismayed by the way that they kind of presented the news in a slightly sensationalist way, that they'd hired an intimacy coordinator on the show. And the reason being, they didn't explain what an intimacy coordinator is. And the thing is, it would be, because I know what that role entails and what it's for, it would be stranger if they didn't hire somebody to do that role. And it's really a non-issue. It's a non sequitur. An intimacy coordinator is somebody who is hired in order to kind of maintain the well-being of the actors, the consent of the actors in any portrayal of any scene of intimacy, whether it's a graphic orgy, which seems to be some people's fears, is that this is going to be Game of Thrones 2.0. We don't know that. We don't know that that's what's happening. All we know is that there's going to be some kind of intimacy in the show.
And it's well placed, and it was very thoughtful criticism, which is great, because this helps us get to a better place of understanding. The intention of examining what little bits of facts that we had, the intention in examining that was to say to the audience, variables in this equation have come together that could not possibly make much sense unless we assume a few things. And that is one of the things we should never, ever, ever do in life, is assume. We should never assume too much. I'm a purveyor of the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I definitely believe in not making assumptions in your personal relationships or professional, because that will lead you to a path of unwanted expectations and usually mistakes, big mistakes. But what we were looking at was Jeff Bezos trying to motivate a larger effort within his production team based upon the success of Game of Thrones. And we were also looking at the amount of money being thrown around, and looking at the variables of why is the casting announcement coming out with a request for actors and actresses comfortable with nudity. At the same time, casting announcements were public information when Amazon had no information at all. So wandering in the dark, there was a minor amount of deduction. And it was about realizing the marketplace has been left with a huge vacuum after Game of Thrones is off the air. And certain people who have worked very carefully within the Game of Thrones universe were transported over into the Second Age of Middle-earth TV show.
You're talking about Brian Tolkien, of course.
Their names are well known to us. So they could have said a long time ago, they could have said in their press release or in their social media, they could have said all these things amount to what we are doing, but they did not. So we were all left in the dark. And I felt very convinced that we should start having a conversation about whether the 21st century fantasy TV shows, including these new adaptations of His Dark Materials and other larger shows that are coming and going with comic book adaptations and other fantasy stories adapted, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make money and they're trying to get subscribers. And I was worried that the audience that sits down every Christmas morning and watches the Fellowship of the Ring with their grandmama and their little babies in the family getting together for family, I didn't think that they were prepared for what could possibly be coming down the pipes. And it was just a warning of saying, are we going to talk about this now? Or are we going to talk about the elements of graphic violence and sexuality and the Game of Thrones level of storytelling, which is distinctly removed from Tolkien's style?
But this isn't an adaptation of The Hobbit that we're talking about here. This is an adaptation of, presumably we're going to see elements of the Akalabeth from the Silmarillion, which doesn't graphically describe violence, but it does include violent elements that we will see adapted with a creative license that Amazon have, we assume, under the license that we presume they have for the second age material that they're adapting. So my point is, I'll be expecting a child's show here. Are we expecting a child-friendly show, a family show? Because I'm not expecting that personally. And is that a problem that we're not expecting that? Is that the point there, or?
Yeah, the point was, will it be a problem if we don't talk about it amongst ourselves? That really was the point. If we don't have this conversation now as a broad, much broader spectrum of fans come to the table and talk about, well, I like certain fantasy that is like The Witcher, and I like certain fantasy which is like Miyazaki. I like my fantasy this way or that way.
You mentioned his dark materials before, which is very, very faithful to the books. I dislike the word faithful when talking about adaptations, but it is quite true to the books, and it is very family friendly.
It is.
I mean, some of the themes in there might be troubling to some people of certain.
But the main characters are children, literally. So obviously, This is very different than the story what we will hear of the second age, which literally is just reminding you. I mean, this is my next to my real job, my job here on YouTube. It was literally debauchery. What was going on in Numenor, and this is what really happened. You know, there was a temple
if we see an adaptation of Numenor without human sacrifice, I will be disappointed.
Yeah.
No.
No, yeah. I would never argue that the version of Numenor that is being adapted should be scrubbed clean. That is certainly not my point of advocacy at all. I would never think that. When I watch The Return of the King and Gothmog says, release the prisoners, we see these horrible decapitated heads tossed into the first circle of Minas Tirith. And ultimately, we ended up with a Hobbit movie that got an R rating at some point down the line when it got to the extended edition. We did end up with an R rating on an adaptation of The Hobbit, which is still surprising, but it's just because of the ridiculous level of violence in those added scenes. But I would never, and let us get further down into the licensing issue a little bit later, but mainly, my main concern was, we're not thinking about this, are we? Are we talking about this? My dad took me to see a John Boorman film because he thought it was a King Arthur movie that would be safe to take an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old to go and see. He had no idea what was going to happen. Thanks, John Boorman.
Swear faith to me, and you shall have mercy. I need battle lords such as you. And I will not swear faith to a squire.
But may I add, I find this fascinating, and I obviously I do think Amazon the main audience will be Americans, right? We see this with Disney Plus, we see this with HBO Plus and all that. It's mainly Americans, right? But as a European, you have very different thinking. You know, I spent my summer holidays in France. They're literally like nude beaches in France and in Germany, and it's normal. So our thinking of hiring, like nudity in film, is very different from the American standard. And that's really fascinating, because literally nobody in Europe was even that. Everybody would totally, I get what you mean, because it's Tolkien. And yes, you know, Tolkien just like saying I'm the biggest Star Wars fan, right? There is no love in Star Wars. There's no love scene needed. But Han and Leia, it's one of the most beautiful love stories of our time. But everything he tells her, she tells him is, I love you. And he says, I know. This is all the love you get, right? It's still a love story. They don't have to show nudity. They don't have to show sex. We understand this is real love, right? And I think this is what Tolkien also, like the version of love, friendship, all that is, the portrayal is very similar. And I think this is what you mean. We don't need to see, brothels of Middle Earth to understand this is how I understood what you said, and you just wanted to start a discussion. I just want to say and drop in here, we Europeans have a very different understanding of sexuality in moving images in film.
And I love that. I love that different perspective. I loved it when I was watching clips of British and French shows when I was a small boy and seeing topless people. I loved that. I thought that was cool. But I was just a little kid, and that stuff seemed very naturalistic and harmless. But there's something that happened with Sansa in a certain episode of Game of Thrones that Tolkien would never write about or show. I just wanted to, I wanted to get to that the slight, there's a difference between having a certain flexibility in how you adapt and a story, and then using other idioms to place squarely on top of Tolkien's idiom of storytelling. And I just wanted to raise the warning flag ever so slightly that we needed to have a broad conversation amongst the fans about whether we want this level or this level of what is portrayed. If we get back to the Silmarillion and the Akalabeth, and of course I was reading last night over again of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. Let's take a look at what we see on the actors' Instagram. Every one of the actresses that have an Instagram for Amazon show are usually showing their hard copy of the Silmarillion. Whoa. Okay. This is a strongly suggestive highlight that we might want to consider, that Amazon has the ability to license material through a legal deal with the Tolkien estate beyond just the appendices in the back of the Return of the King.
I'm 100%. I would bet money on it. Yeah.
I would too. And I've been glad to speculate with more confidence and saying, in fact, one of my next articles that I want to write is about a certain page of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. And just that single page is some of the best dialogue that Anatar, Sauron, could ever have in trying to persuade, his level of evil persuasion while he's putting on this facade. It's remarkable dialogue, and it makes me think that the writer's room over at Amazon Studios doesn't have to work that hard to make up stuff in between the bullet points of the appendices. There's really, really great material there. Don't you think?
Yes. Oh my God. I'm 100% with you. And this is, what I always say, they need characters people know. Yes, there will come new people, new generations will come in, but they need, for people like us, who mainly love the movies, they need a character like Sauron. Right? Literally, Dan and I, 2 days ago at a stream, talked for 1.5 hours about Sauron, and you don't know that much, but I want this Sauron. I want to know who is, behind literally just this eye. We knew nothing in the 3 movies about him, but he was the main protagonist. And this is what the Silmarillion gives us about Sauron is so good. And I think somebody like Shippy and all these people involved, they would have told them, right, there is already stuff there. You don't have to make Sauron up. Tolkien gave us everything on him. I mean, call him Tevildo, call him whatever you want to call him, I love that, and I'm 100% sure they have the rights to submit. And Dan didn't. I mean, we talked to Corey about this, and he hinted at there was another contract after the first.
Yeah, well, I should say he specifically said that he doesn't have any inside information. We should say.
But the thing is, what I understood as there was a first contract, then, you know, I worked in the bloody movie business, and I know, and they looked into the material and they were, oh, there's a bigger, wider world, let's try. And I'm pretty sure Tolkien Estate was like, I mean, they already have this one. They don't want to do Years of the Lambs. Let's have them the Numenor content. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It has to be. I don't really see realistically how they can make this story happen over 5 seasons. Or maybe if they get lucky, they can go more than 5 seasons. But they need that material at the back of the Silmarillion, in addition to several bits of material in Unfinished Tales. And some other things. If there's a secondary deal, I'm so glad that would be confirmed, that exists, although we don't know what it is. A point of clarification: you guys are aware that Tom Shippey is really not working as a consultant on the show.
Yeah, we're aware. What we don't know about that is why, under what circumstances he left. Nothing's been said. Nothing from the studio has been released about Tom Shippey's. Whether he's been released from his contract, or whether he left of his own volition, or whether just the terms of his employment were over.
If you've ever worked with a very literate, very professor-like person, and you want to do a movie with him, you will know that 2 worlds clash. Is that? Wouldn't you, Clifford? Wouldn't you agree that his idea of is very different from people who have, this is their job. You have to produce a movie. Yes, there's material, but you need to apply, to an audience that is there for the visuals, not for a book. They don't sit in front, they sit in front of a TV, not in front of a book. It's different. You need different techniques and tell a story differently.
Indeed. Well, we are now also wondering how different does Amazon want to go? If you can imagine that The Hobbit are 3 movies that are actually automobiles. There's 3 automobiles parked next to each other in the car park. And the Lord of the Rings movies are 3 more automobiles. And they all look alike. You can tell by looking at those 6 cars parked next to each other. That's a vision of Middle-earth, which is consistent. They want to bring in their... people, yes. Oh my God, 11 out of 11 Oscars just from the last movie. Then Amazon wants to bring in their car, and they want to park 5 more cars so that they all look. Do they want them to all look like it's the same parking lot? The same, because what they want to say is, you love Middle-earth? Come with us. We're inviting you back. If you love Middle-earth, you're going to love our show. If you like driving in these cars, come take a spin in this automobile. That's what they want to get subscribers to come in.
They don't want to get them to a spaceship where they've never been to, right? You need some...
there's certainly a reason why they're filming in New Zealand again. I mean, that's the reason, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously. But
they have...
sorry.
No, I was just going to say they had, to a minimal degree, brought in some very familiar artists from Weta, from Weta's practical workshop, to come and do armor, hero weapons, and hero armor and designs. Although it seems they don't want to fully engage everything that Weta did. But we also heard a couple of years ago, and I never confirmed this, that they also licensed unused footage that New Line Cinema had that had never been used. And I wonder if that's true. I do wonder if that's true.
Maybe from the War of the Last Alliance stuff, where the rings were given out, because I do think the ring forging is one of the main things they will tell.
It's a possibility. I mean, they did cast somebody as Gil Galad in that sequence that we barely see him in the movie, but
where you see a mean, yeah, you see the dark elf. But what I want, last thing for me on this topic, the Silmarillion content. Look, like you said, Cliff, people will buy the books, right? A lot of people who just know, because I'm always like, how does nobody know? There is a book called The Silmarillion, or there is a Unfinished Tales and all that out there. But a lot of people just think it's The Hobbit and the 3 Lord of the Ring books. And people will buy, they will Google, how can I prepare? This is what people tell me under my Numenor videos. They're like, cool, I want to prepare for the Amazon show. I heard this is Second Age. I'll buy the books, I'll Google. People will buy the Silmarillion. Amazon would be stupid not to adapt it how it's written in the books. Because if you read the book and you're like, but it's so different in the show, that doesn't make sense.
I agree 1,000%. They're interested, obviously they get the ancillary results of selling more books online on Amazon if their show is successful. They're gonna make, I mean, the different strata of this is crazy how much extra money they're gonna make from all these other interests. Yeah, but
and they have stacks in some publishers, some of the European publishers. So interesting.
Yes, indeed. The only reason why this happened, period, and the only reason why we're talking about this TV show is because Christopher Tolkien retired a year before his death. It's the only reason.
Yeah.
And prior to that moment, Christopher's interest was literary. Only the literary legacy mattered to him. But now we're at a point where the scions of Professor Tolkien, and that includes his grandchildren, actively, who are managing things now that Christopher is gone. They are realizing that there's a synthesis of popular culture and book sales. There's a synthesis of the armchair scholar who sits at home and has a certain level of understanding, and real academics who are there at the oxen moot, where I was invited once by the Tolkien Society. I don't know if I will ever be invited again, but you know, there are levels. There are levels of fandom that reach across so many places now. They're looking at it in a much bigger way, and I just wanted to say that.
They're from a different time. His grandchildren are like maybe our parents' age, but you know, they understand time is different now. Demands of fans is not just writing a letter to Tolkien and him replying. It's having a blog, it's having a YouTube channel. There's so many different forms of communication. And I do think they want to keep that Tolkien's legacy alive. And this is the way to go.
Absolutely.
Father, like if you see people, a 12-year-old boy loves it, but he only watches YouTube. So yeah, let him watch, you know, like
the largest wave of popular culture that happened when Tolkien was alive was the 1960s British and American counterculture movement. And Professor Tolkien couldn't understand it. He did not understand. He did not get it. And he did not fully appreciate the intellectual arguments that were happening, not just on campuses with college-age kids buying up paperback copies of The Lord of the Rings like had never, ever been sold before. But here comes generations of
Led Zeppelin fans getting into Lord of the Rings for the first time.
I was just about to say that. Off campus, the musicians and the rock and rollers and the drug parties and Gandalf's Garden magazine for the counterculture in London at the time. We talked all about that in the documentary. Now we're at another point. Where popular culture is so hungry, so thirsty for it. You end up with TV shows like Amazon's Carnival Row. You end up with TV shows where they cast, previous Lord of the Rings members. That's what we're at. I just wanted to write that article. One last word about that. I wanted to talk about sex and sensibility because we as individuals all have different sensibilities. We come to the table knowing that we love J.R.R. Tolkien for a reason, and that reason is that his world, his literary world, his languages, and his great success at world building are distinct. They are very distinct. And if you're going to play fast and loose with the rules, then you're going to end up with something that might not be recognizably what you paid for. And they paid so much money for this license. So I really just wanted to get the ball rolling. And unfortunately, there was not a lot of other counterpoints. I was hoping that other staff people at theonering.net would counter me and write other articles saying, no, come on, Clifford, let's look at it this way. I'm open. I'm totally open.
You should have invited me.
Yeah, you should have invited.
You are invited.
We would have happily written something.
You are both more than welcome anytime to do a guest article. You are guest article anytime. I will personally format your article and get it up there. Anytime.
From a female European point of view.
Absolutely. I love it. But I mean, if The Lord of the Rings is something you can put on Christmas morning with the entire family, and Game of Thrones is not something you can put on to sit down Christmas morning with the entire family, and we're talking the little babies and your grandma at the same time, all together.
Depends on the family.
Again, Europeans are totally fine with that.
It does depend on the family. My sister watches Game of Thrones at home with her very young son, who's 2 years old, who doesn't understand what's going on. She'll happily watch Game of Thrones during the daytime. Maybe not on Christmas morning, but
Well, we're going to have to face the facts. A lot of stuff that happens in the Second Age, especially covering the downfall of Numenor, is deeply, deeply disturbing and violent and as dark, almost as dark as Tolkien ever got. Although, things in the Silmarillion get incredibly darker. But Professor Tolkien, gosh, yes. No one can ever imagine that one of the Eldar would take up arms against their own brethren. Who can?
If you tell people elves killed each other, they'd be like, "What? When?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you tell someone who doesn't know the story of the Silmarillion, the story of Eöl and Arathel and
yes,
Maeglin. They won't
exactly.
believe it.
Well, I'm totally open and welcome. I welcome the darkness of the storytelling, but I do not welcome the idiom of the storytelling being altered. For the record,
I get it. Yeah, no,
I can accept that. My very specific and narrow criticism, just to close this issue up for once and for all, and I did promise that we wouldn't spend too long on this, so this will be the last word on it. And
I'm down.
Is about this issue of the intimacy coordinator, and that was my very specific narrow criticism that I brought up last time, which I wanted to make the point that is a good thing that they've hired somebody to do that.
You're right, and you're right. It's unfortunate.
Weinstein world, it's absolutely a good thing.
I agree, and it's unfortunate that I glossed over that in my piece. You're quite right. It would be necessary now and essential for anybody's well-being, even upon the simplest of things, like, well, we have some CGI dwarves taking a nude bath in the fountain in Rivendell in an unexpected journey, and
which I can have done without, by the way.
I know. Well, Nori had to snap him with the towel, so we had to have that joke in there. But okay, but you're right, and absolutely it is true that the simplicity of a scene or the complexity of the scene doesn't matter. If there's any nudity, then that professional needs to be there to make sure that the actors are in a comfortable, emotional, and psychological space, and that the crew understand not to be there and to behave themselves, and that the director himself, looking at you, Quentin Tarantino, and what happened with Uma Thurman in the car, all that stuff.
That story is horrible. I was horrified. How is she?
It is. It is. But to have an intimacy coordinator on stage right there at that moment is an excellent way to deter any nonsense or any people poking around and looking around the plants where they shouldn't be looking. I'm all about that. And it is seemingly the news that I'm hearing now that the nudity that is probably going to be seen will be no more interesting than what happened in Terminator 2, when the new Terminator shows up from the future, and he's briefly naked in silhouette after the time travel bubble disappears, and he just stands up in the camera in a briefly naked silhouette. That's the rumor that I'm hearing now, that the Lord of the Rings series isn't going to go any further than that. And that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, listen, imagine these scenes with Arwen in Rivendell, right? That was literally, her dress was pretty see-through. And I know a lot of teenage boys who with me watched that and were like, "Ooh, wow!" So I do agree. I don't think there will be that much more. It doesn't make sense. Like I said with the Star Wars reference, it can be, they can portray a love story or love or lust or whatever without people, like having orgies. We don't need that.
They can. Well, in the 1970s. It was either John Borman, again, his name comes up as the director of Excalibur and some other wonderful films.
Yeah.
It was either Ralph Bakshi or John Borman who was going to produce The Lord of the Rings. And I have read the screenplay. John Borman's screenplay in the 70s, which was ultimately not made by United Artists, includes an actual orgy in Lothlorien where Frodo and the other members of the Fellowship are all in the water, naked, with Lady Galadriel, and they all get particularly aroused by Lady Galadriel. And she chooses Frodo. Frodo is the only person worthy to go off with her into the distance for some actual sexual activity. And there's stuff in the screenplay about members of the Fellowship masturbating loudly. This stuff exists. It's real. That really happened.
Wow.
I'll send you the script.
So I'm very glad that was never made and put into production. But part of me,
it was on my mind.
It would be curious.
It was on my mind.
Curious to see that.
You'd be more than curious, but there's no amount of acid that you can wash your eyes with afterwards.
You can never unsee it.
I'm telling you. Now, if Ralph Bakshi can make X-rated animated films like Fritz the Cat, and he can make wildly incensing, racially difficult films like Coonskin, and can show movies with constant, nudity and sex and things, but when Ralph Bakshi got his hands on The Lord of the Rings, they threw out the John Borman script and started a whole new adaptation, which was co-written by the author of The Last Unicorn, Peter S. Beagle, who is a universally adored American fantasy author. And when Ralph released his films, unlike all of his other dark fantasy animated films, like Wizards and Fire and Ice, there was no sexuality and no nudity, and the idiom of Tolkien was adhered to in the most remarkable way. And I thought to myself, well, if Ralph Bakshi could do it in 1977, then Amazon Studios could do that too. That was ultimately where I was.
I don't know that there was no sexuality in the Bakshi film, because Aragorn's like short shorts that he was wearing, a little bit racy.
Let's not talk about, seriously, I'm still traumatized. We had a stream with John on John's channel.
We did with our mutual friend John Webster.
Oh my God! And
it was about the Hobbit film, actually, but the Rankin Bass film. But
yeah, I love John, and John's so great to talk with, and he's amongst our many friends in the community. But I'm really, really glad that we're talking about this, because I just wanted to let you know that when I did write my article, I was mindful of all those things, and it's not like there have not been in the past there's been a couple of close calls where an adaptation of Tolkien would have appeared in popular culture, and it would have ruined it for everyone. If John Borman had done what he was going to do, we would never have had Bob Shea and the guys at New Line Cinema giving Peter Jackson permission to make his movies. It would not have worked, because the taste in everyone's palate would have been, oh, that?
Yeah, it was so many little things could have gone wrong with the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that happily didn't. I mean, if you watch the making of the documentary, the appendices stuff on the DVD extras, you soon learn that Harvey Weinstein, going back to him again, very nearly messed things up right at the beginning.
I'm really glad they took his name off. They took his name off The Hobbit.
Yes.
Yeah. Take his name off everything if possible.
I wish they could. I wish they could retroactively take his name off of Lord of the Rings. And you have the most beautiful kitty cat. I'm so in love.
One. I have 3 cats. I'm sorry.
I love it.
They always make a period. They are like, they love the camera and the light, and they always
Yes, they do. That happens to me too. I'm usually doing a live stream for the One Ring, and then the next door neighbor's cat will march into the house and loudly announce himself. He's blown my live stream all the time. It happens a lot. Yeah. And I know that Queen Beruthiel.
I know. This is like Clifford, like Quickbeam is yours. I'm Queen Beruthiel. That's
yes.
But I mean,
Queen Beruthiel.
I have 3. I'm not on 12 with 1 additional, so I'm working on that. Crazy cat lady.
That's wonderful. Oh, this is such a wonderful time to have this conversation with you, both of you. It's really, really great to share this energy and all these ideas. I know that I should have, and maybe someday I will come back and write another piece and say, well, look, this is where we are now. But I just wanted to get the big guns out. I wanted to write that piece and get the big guns out there, because I wanted to say we as a fandom need to have a conversation about how our professor, Tolkien, is going to be represented in large-scale popular culture going forward. Really.
What happened to Luke? Star Wars, just referencing Star Wars again. Look, people have expectations with characters they grew up with. What was all the backlash about The Last Jedi and how Rian Johnson treated Star Wars fans and all that? People have expectations with characters they grew to love over years and years. And this is the same for Tolkien, right? You have expectations, and it's okay to talk to the fans like you did and got your point out and started a discussion. I think this is it's we're not in a dictatorship where just one opinion counts. Right. Let people talk.
So let's move on a bit, and I wanted to ask you about licensing, and we touched on this a little bit already, but we've kind of speculated on what might be included in the licensing, and we also talked about Tom Shippey already, and his word on it from a couple of years ago was that they have the rights to the Lord of the Rings material, and that's it at that time, it seemed. We've since had the maps, which have elements from Unfinished Tales, which only exist in Unfinished Tales. So we can assume that there's some sort of scope for extra material outside of the Lord of the Rings main text. We know that we're getting Numenor, which I would say the primary source for the Numenor material is the Akalabeth from the Silmarillion. I think we can probably safely assume that there isn't broad rights for the whole Silmarillion. Would you say? Would you agree with that? Or
I would agree. I would agree that what they got and what they're interested in, since Tom Shippey did say they must stay within existing historical pinpoints on the chronology, and they cannot alter them. I think that they have licensed the chapter of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, and combine that with the Akalabeth. You have everything there that supports them.
Years. You have 3,000.
Yeah. And you also have enough there.
Potentially the Galadriel and Celeborn chapter from Unfinished Tales might be relevant as well, because that is
and the Istari.
And the what? Sorry,
the Istari.
The Istari. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
potentially something that might overlap with the Second Age. Yeah.
I've heard Christopher Lee pronounce it Istari enough times that it's been stuck in my head. But yeah, yes, the Istari in Unfinished Tales and the history of Celeborn and Galadriel. If you're going to name the series The Lord of the Rings, and it looks like they don't have any intention of changing the title of The Lord of the Rings, then they've got enough stuff in the Akalabeth and of the Rings of Power and the Third Age to really drive Anatar as the number one character. And that is going to be the most satisfying and interesting stuff. Like you pointed out very early on, Helen, and you beautifully said, we've got to see and understand so much more of this character than just how he was shown in the 6 films. I'm excited about that because I want to see Anatar going to Lindon and attempting to get into the frontier areas of Lindon, and emissaries of Gil-galad and Elrond saying, no, you are not welcome here, and slamming the door in his face. And I'm really intrigued by how a character can be written that Sauron takes failure and success in equal measure and makes his plans go further and further and further. There's a lot of great stuff that Tolkien wrote, which is going to support that character. And he is going to be all eyes on Sauron in this series. I'm excited about that.
And how he exploits the weakness of men as well. The weakness of men being this need for eternal life and the envy of the elves that they have. We've never really explored that theme.
Yeah, with Numenor and Al-Farazon, you can, that would be so amazing, because that's one of my main interests in the whole Tolkien universe, the mortality versus immortality aspect. And it's not, it's about friendship and wars and all that, but this is, you have so many times, especially in the Silmarillion, where this is the main plot, right? And
many of the most beautiful writings ever focused on this theme and would had this theme as one of the main staples of the ideas that went into the text.
You're right. You're quite right. In Professor Tolkien's letters, in one of his letters, I don't remember which one, he states very plainly that the theme of Lord of the Rings is to examine death and deathlessness. For example, the way that Lady Galadriel uses her ring of power to sustain Lothlorien in a state of deathlessness. Yes. And the desire of the Eldar to not return to Valinor, but to make little pocket kingdoms in Middle-earth where they don't die and Middle-earth is not dying and everything is just a state of holding time. And Tolkien rightly says that is the great spiritual error of the elves at that point, is their approach to deathlessness, when they had already been given the gift of their own fate by being the firstborn children of Ilúvatar. The strange jealousy and misunderstandings that elves and men have with each other, complicated over many centuries, is what Sauron takes advantage of. And Sauron exploits Ar-Pharazôn's weakness on that level of not understanding the gift of men. And you're so right that these metaphysical conversations are going to be the meat and potatoes of the downfall of Numenor. And I'm excited about that, really, really excited about it.
I mean, I don't think we can have looking back at the Atrabeth. This is basically where Tolkien writes about exactly this thing. So for everybody who doesn't know it, please read it. It's one of the most beautiful pieces, Tolkien, next to The Mariner's Wife, which is also awesome. So the Atrabeth is Finrod and Andreth, a mortal woman and an immortal elf, talking about the concept of mortality and not understanding it. It's so beautiful, and it's the foundation of everything that goes on in the later ages. So Sadly, I don't think, maybe they mention it, like Legolas and all the others, they mentioned songs about Nimrodel and stuff like, maybe they can do that, like Aragorn was singing the song of Beren and Luthien and stuff like that. Maybe they can. I would love that as a little
maybe
geek,
they can. Maybe they can lift portions of dialogue from the Athrobeth and put it in other people's mouths. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
But I agree. That's wonderfully said. You know how so many people are confused about Frodo's departure at the Grey Havens? Because they automatically think this is part of the conversation of immortality versus mortality. And then here we come as the Tolkien people and try to say, well, no, it's more like this. But it's exciting to see how much good material they have available in front of them. I am very encouraged to see the actors and actresses showing a copy of the Sill on their Instagram. I love that. And if this is all true, and if this does come together, then they have the potential to make this a very, very, very good and very specific Tolkien series that can properly be called The Lord of the Rings. And we can understand a million things more that piece together how Galadriel got to where she got in the Third Age, and the downfall of Numenor, and why does Aragorn always have that look on his face?
Because everything and explain things. We kind of took for granted because we knew stuff, but you can explain a lot. Yeah, what you said. But boys, do you think? I have one question for you guys. Do you think, because this is what all the big studios are doing right now, look at the Marvel universe, look what Disney is doing with Star Wars, expanding it. So let's say, because you just said, Cliff, you think they have a certain part of the Silmarillion. What I think, and I mean that part and what they could cover, is the Second Age is basically 3,000 years, so a lot to cover. So they could do a sequel, a prequel show, right? So we have 5 seasons of I think that's pretty confirmed now, right? That they have 5 seasons of this Amazon show. Do you boys think that we could, if this works out, we could get more? Everybody who loves Tolkien is screaming for First Age because everybody wants dragons, like me. I mean, come on, bring the dragons. Do you think there could be, if this is successful, would the Tolkien estate do that? I mean, Cliff, you have some insights and have been dealing with that subject for a long time.
The best news that we have is that the Tolkien estate is still involved, and they have veto power to say, ultimately, no, you can't print that screenplay, that script. And yes, I imagine this project as a pyramid, and at the very top of the pyramid is 5 seasons of the show, and there's another strata where they can make other auxiliary shows, and they could do a little after show. Like there's going to be an after show for the Grand Republic, and there was after the Thrones was popular. Then there's going to be maybe an animated series which has been tossed around a lot that takes us to what the Hobbits are doing. Yes. Yeah, they've got so many, because we're not going to have any Hobbits in the Second Age. Yeah. So
I'd love to see a Clone Wars style cartoon animated show. I should say animated show. Helen doesn't like the word cartoon. An animated show in that style, set in Middle Earth. Oh my goodness!
Because you can do with not much production value, because you don't have to pay all the actors and everything, and you can do so much and flesh out characters you could never. Like the Anakin I love. Why do I love Anakin so much? Not because of the prequels, because of Clone Wars. And you learn so much about him, and it's cheaper to produce it, and this is what I'm thinking. I don't think Amazon just thought, okay, let's have 5, 6, 7 years and 5 seasons. I don't think that. I think this is just the beginning. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not just phasers, but I do think my personal thinking is what you said, Cliff. Is this the beginning? They will learn now what works, what doesn't work, and then there'll be more. And what I find weird, we heard in the beginning, this was the first thing when I saw the maps, what I heard was young Aragorn. I heard there will be a show about young Aragorn. And I knew
I was the one who reported that. I was the one who broke that story. It was. Yes.
They did 2 or 3 weeks of pre-production on that, didn't they?
The reason why we reported that is because we were hearing reports from all the other vendors, including special effects vendors, toy, merchandise vendors, and they were being asked by Amazon to give a pitch based on young Aragorn. That's how we knew that at the time. And we're talking about people who will do 3D scanning and modeling, so you can have sculptures and busts and beautiful polystone sculptures, and companies that will do other visual effects and other ancillary things on the outside of the series. And they were all universally being asked to bring a pitch so they could get the job with Amazon Studios based upon young Aragorn. And then, as naturally happens, they got the writers' room together. They picked a couple of showrunners. They got Mr. Payne, J.D. Payne, and the other fellow, and I forget his name at the moment. And they got them all. That's right, Patrick McKay. Thank you. And they evolved, and that thing evolved away from young Aragorn. So
okay. Because I was wondering, is that in their back pocket? Was that maybe, sometimes they film pilots and then they completely change the story because they see it's not working.
Well, they're going to be looking at the success of WandaVision and Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, now being extended into other television formats. And they're looking at The Mandalorian. And Amazon Studios is very, very carefully watching the success of The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, which was highly successful and had all of its young adult books and its extra comic books. And they're looking at every little thing to see what works and what doesn't work. And I can guarantee you that what you just said about a Star Wars Clone Wars series could just as easily be built around a young Aragorn concept as it could be around, Samwise being the mayor of the Shire year after year after year. They could anything they want. They have access to it. They have access to it.
Really exciting time to be. This is what I talk a lot about Star Wars on a Friends channel because I want to keep my channel just Lord of the Ring, but I always go to a Friends channel and I always say it's so exciting to be a Star Wars fan right now, but I do think I'll say that phrase in, I don't know, 1 or 2 years about Tolkien. And I'm positive.
I'm already very excited. I'm pretty excited about Lord of the Rings stuff. I'm very convinced that there will be more after this show because I'm an optimist when it comes to this stuff.
Same.
I'd like to be optimistic too. I really, really would like to be optimistic, and I am. I am to the degree of maybe 90, maybe 85% optimistic. But I have seen Tolkien go wrong in the past, and we have seen it go. And I'm talking about the way Celebrimbor is represented in the popular video games, the popular video game series Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Now, professionally, God, I mean, now
what was that?
I'm okay with that, by the way.
I mean, we have to do podcasts, and we have to have our friends, Nerd of the Rings and Fellowship of the Fans and History of the Ages, and of course, Yoistan at Men of the West, and all of our other wonderful people like you at Voice of Geekdom who are doing all these things. We have to go online and say, no, that's not the truth. That's not what happened with Celebrimbor. And so I'm looking forward to clearing the air and being able to say, here's the success of this show, but here is what the writers missed. There's also this. And we have years of commentary and fun disputes. We get to have some fun with this.
I should quit my real life job and begin. No, I'd never do that. But yay, exciting. Now, I just wanted to know if you also think that is their plan, because Amazon wouldn't buy and pay this amount of money just with a very short-term vision, right? I don't think that. They have very clever mind works. at Disney, and what she tells me, they literally plan stuff for 2035 already. So that is, like, they look at trends and all that, and what medium will people use in 10 years. This is what we do in the car industry, right? When I plan my marketing campaigns, I'm not planning for 1 year. I plan for 5, 6, 7 years. Like,
Exactly. They're looking at how COVID-19 has dramatically changed people's streaming habits. And they're looking at the way that I am responding on Tuesday live show and the way that you are responding. They're looking at all the data and more. Sometimes I think they're more interested in collecting data than they are in producing a series. But
it's
that's
Amazon.
just cynical. That's just cynicism.
No, you're not.
That's just cynicism.
Wrong. No, you're not that wrong.
But I hate to be cynical. I'm naturally an optimist. I am.
I'd watch all those Netflix documentaries on, the Silicon Valley and what. Well, if you have free content, you are obviously, this is what they say, if you want free content, then obviously you're the thing they trade, right? Then you are, well.
Exactly. I know. Well, what we have in front of us is Simon Tolkien, the grandson, Simon Tolkien, who's a very successful published author. And we have other grandchildren. And we've got a family which is doing a balancing act. I'm intrigued, and maybe one day we'll be lucky enough to do a really good interview with some of the members of the family who are involved. There's a juggling act of what Christopher Tolkien used to do in keeping the literary legacy tight as a drum and protecting it and making sure that the interests of the literary legacy are furthered along. At the same time, they're also juggling how consumers are now aware of and will be interested in future books. And there are no more future books. We don't have...
Coming.
Yeah, there's one coming out this year in June.
There's the last of the, the materials that had been worked on and edited by Christopher. But, Mr. Martin is still very slowly trundling along in his hamster wheel, and God knows we're going to get the last couple of books sometime. I don't know, but the scenario is a bit different with this juggling act, and I'm kind of intrigued to see how it plays out, really.
Yeah. And as Dan always says, that Christopher, and I agree, he was, for me, he was very careful with what he put in the published. Like The Fall of Gondolin is literally one of my favorite stories. I didn't like the book because it's just notes, and it's I could have lived without it. I mean, the illustrations were beautiful, but I could have lived without the Fall of Gondolin book. And he could have, just because if you know a vision, this is what Martin, by the way, I think he said that he has people, if he one day dies, he has people that could finish his books. And this...
Wow. He said that?
I think he said the opposite, actually. I think he said
I think there's what isn't... No, not Philippa. Some woman, and she always...
he does have writing assistants that he works with.
Exactly, yeah.
Actually, I think at least one of the guys that writes The Expanse used to be one of his assistants as well. But he's since replaced them with somebody else. So there are people that you would think could do it.
I'm pretty sure that those books will be aided.
I'm no expert, as you know, so I don't know.
No, I don't. This is what I heard, and I don't. Think Christopher did a good job there. I'm sorry. I mean, thank you for giving us all that, but he could have. He knew his father's vision. Couldn't he just write it in his own words, at least a little bit, just sometime?
There are parts that he did.
I know, but Dan,
it's the Beren and Luthien story, but it is very conservatively done. Yeah,
very, very conservatively, because I think that Christopher never wanted to end up looking like the way Brian Herbert looks after his dad is gone. Frank left the Dune legacy there, and there's his son attempting to pick it up with mixed results. So I think he was looking at that.
And then
I've always kind of...
Christopher was accused of that anyway when the Silmarillion came out, because people didn't quite understand what it was. And they thought that it was just, something that he'd written on his own back. But sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. I was always intrigued by Professor Tolkien never getting the Silmarillion finished to his satisfaction. And that's because of his perfectionist approach. We know that when he wrote The Lord of the Rings, he wrote several chapters and then scratched it all and threw it away and started all over again. He changed the name of Bingo to Frodo. And Professor Tolkien did not even know, did not know who Strider was. Strider appeared.
With wooden feet called Trotter.
Trotter. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, so I don't even know what if Simon Tolkien, who is a published writer, what if Simon decided to come in and start doing the whole Brian Herbert thing? I don't know how fans would take that, though.
If Simon, for me personally, I can just answer myself. If Simon has the vision of his grandfather and knows that how he wanted to tell, for example, I don't know, whatever story, like tell us more about the Vanya elves, because we literally know nothing about them. If he knows and he has some, I don't know, some letter that is not yet published or whatever, if he knows it and he makes a better story out of it from a one-pager, I'm fine with that. Please don't make a 3-part movie like The Hobbit out of it, but you can make a short, I mean,
I hear you.
What about 5 seasons of a television show, though, Helen? Would you be okay with that? Because,
But TV is always different for me. TV is not canon, mostly not canon. For me, I studied literature. The books are canon. I don't take everything. And I can live with that. And I'm fine with that because I know TV has to work different. You couldn't put in the Scouring of the Shire in a TV adaptation or in a cinematic adaptation, because you can't have 3 culminations of, like, everybody would be like, wait, but this is the ending. No, this is the ending. Oh, we have another ending.
I think you could do it on TV, but just not in a feature film.
On TV, but not in cinema. And it's different. It works different. And I do understand why. Or somebody like Tom Bombadil, I get that he was not in there because everybody and their mother would be like, what? This is weird. What is going on now? Like, people from the Shire traveling Middle Earth, and then there's this weird guy and his wife. Like, it wouldn't fit. And I get that. It's different. Like, moving images and cinema and telling a story visually works different, and you need different techniques.
That's also true. And we have a tough lesson in front of us. It's so true what you say, Helen, that I think that's why I'm going to keep writing the things that I'm doing for the OneRing.net, because I think the audience is not yet prepared fully for what might actually be here. And it's comforting, as Gandalf would say, well, that is an encouraging thought. It's comforting to know that the studio is not just working with the bullet points and the calendars in the back of the appendices.
No.
With real unfinished tales and Silmarillion being licensed, and it's not confirmed, but with that stuff really in front of them, combined with the appendix A and B, especially A and B, they're going to have a lot of grist for the mill, really.
Yeah, I agree.
You know how often I hear people say, oh, Amazon's just going to be a fanfic. Their TV series is going to be based on sketchy notes in the appendix and bullet points, and the rest of it is going to be all made up stuff. And I'm thinking, well, maybe to some degree there's going to be people like Tauriel invented out of whole cloth, but they've got enough out of this expensive $1 billion license to actually go forward. They really do.
And my argument, what I earlier said, people will buy the Silmarillion, especially, if the actors post it, people will buy it, and then they read the book, and then why didn't they put this in? People will ask questions then. And they're not stupid. They will stay as true as possible. I do think that.
Have you seen? You mentioned earlier that the actors were posting themselves reading the Silmarillion. I'm not sure the pronunciation of the surname of the actress, but Sophia Nomvite. I'm not sure of this pronunciation.
Is it the Galadriel girl?
No, she's not the Galadriel girl. We don't know who she is, but she's cast for the first 2 episodes, we think, at least. Her copy of the Silmarillion looks very well worn. It looks like she's been reading it for years, which was greatly encouraging for me.
Indeed. I think you were thinking of Morfydd Clark. I think the actress...
Not Morfydd Clark. I don't think...
the other one. You're thinking of the other person. I don't remember how to pronounce her last name because I don't want to embarrass myself, honestly. But yeah, if it weren't for that, if I had not been seeing, and those things are allowed, they are allowed to post pictures only because Amazon Studios allows them to put that on their gram. Yeah. So there is a reason why the Silmarillion has been shown over and over again by different actors and actresses. Also, the current rumor that we've been coughing up like a cat hairball for a couple of weeks now is that, Russell Crowe is now visibly on Twitter sharing comments and jokes back and forth with Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne and the writers. So, and he's secretly grown a big beard, and he's down there looking a hell of a lot like Air Farazan. And I
wanted to say Círdan. Oh no, Air Farazan. That kind of
he can't be Círdan. He's not an elf, is he?
No, because you said beard. I was just
beard.
Not that many people with beard. Yeah.
Yeah, we have enough to speculate and enough to be talking for weeks and weeks and weeks without them ever putting out an official press release. But there's the danger if they keep, if they had left the fans in a vacuum forever, then we would have been writing and producing podcasts and articles that were a little bit more wild and off note than even what I wrote in the speculation department. So I'm really glad that Amazon has reached out to the onering.net to share the story synopsis, and they're more actively very interested now in engaging the fans so that we can have a bit more grounded, realistic conversations about what's going on. There's a lot at stake.
My little speculation on that synopsis, and you can deny this if you like, but was that they leaked that synopsis deliberately because it seemed the timing of it seemed too deliberate.
Actually, something came across my desk.
And you know what? Another thing as well. A friend of ours, who I won't say who, but some friends of ours actually got that before you guys did, but they didn't think that it was real.
I got several weeks ago. I got something that I should not have gotten, and it was it caused a lot of things to happen that should not have been released. And so the studio said, instead of running with that accident, instead of running with that leak, we're going to let you talk about this. And so they had the showrunners write that synopsis. Then they had it approved by the Tolkien estate in a matter of days. And then we were able to share it with community of fans. And that's, it was a little bit of cover your ass moment, but it was also, here's an opportunity to get a more energetic conversation that we can be more in control of instead of accident slipping out. Right.
And that's the right way to be doing it. And it's about time as well, because it was getting to the point where it was like, are we ever going to get any information about this show?
Because they came out with the maps so long ago. That was 1.5 years ago. They came out with the maps. And I mean, obviously, the apocalypse happened in between. And I get, there was some delay.
Yes.
But no. When do you guys expect a trailer? Like summer?
If there was no COVID and if San Diego Comic-Con would have been held normally, that would have been the moment they put out a big teaser trailer. That would have been the moment. Question mark hovers over everything now.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to think they've
wonder.
probably got more than enough footage now to be able to cut a trailer together. So
it doesn't have to be a trailer. You could. This is what Star Wars did before they came out with the sequels. You can just do like behind the scenes footage to give. Oh, The Witcher did it as well. You know, when Henry Cavill showed his costume for the first time. You can just give the people a feeling of this world, and so we're rest assured, okay, it still looks like Tolkien. It's not, I don't know, Tolkien in space or on drugs or whatever. Like they can, without producing a perfect trailer, they can, give out little things. And I think that is, and Jeff Bezos even said, he'll throw so much money at advertising this. He needs to keep people keep people talking about it. So they sell books in advance, they can sell merch, they can still sell, like Legolas figures and all that. They need to keep people talking before the show comes out. So I think that would be
do.
clever.
Oh, you're right, Helen. The rumors I've heard is that if San Diego Comic-Con had continued normally, they would have built an off-site installation adjacent to the convention center that would have been the largest and most immersive Enter Middle-earth. They probably would have taken over the Padres Stadium and done the entire stadium the way that Adult Swim and other companies have taken over that space, which is right across the street. They probably would have made this massive immersive thing. It would have been wild. And in the future, I hope they can still do something wonderful and fun like that. I'm excited by. I'm really excited by the concept of Middle Earth now expanding for the first time, and you're going back to the 1970s when the only books that have ever been adapted are The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But now, for the very first time, we're going to go. Like they said in the story synopsis, we're going to go to the furthest reaches of the map. And I'm encouraged by the Blue Wizards being key characters that will take us there. I'm really excited by that. Professor Tolkien famously decided to revisit the story of Alatar and Palando, and created
times, actually. Like he
several
several versions of that, and only one of them was in the second age.
And that version where they become Morhennatar and Romestamo in the second age. How about we put money? Let's make a gentleman and a gentle lady's bet. Let's do a bet. You make a bet, I'll make a bet. I bet you that if they did license anything with the Blue Wizards, it will be that later version that Tolkien rewrote and had them be more successful in purposely working against the seeds, the old latent seeds that Morgoth had sown with the other races of men in the far east and the far south. I would hope that that's a good bet that I could win money on, that they've adapted, or they've got the license, rather, to adapt that part of the story, where the Blue Wizards are more active and more successful than the earlier versions, where Professor Tolkien ruminated that they might not have been successful in their efforts at all. What do you think?
I think that we would be foolish to take that bet, Cliff.
Would he? Okay.
I'm not
I believe you. If you say it, then I believe you.
I'm not sure they will show up, boys, because the thing is, I think that makes the world maybe too big. I don't know. What I understood is I always saw it as we'll see the Easterlings and him turning Kamul. This is what I imagined. And maybe, Harad. And I thought that was that. I mean, it's not like, Quivienen is gone. Where I don't know, really. I don't think the Wizards.
Could they not do both?
Cool, and Gandalf wasn't there, so maybe we'll get this.
True. Well, when we went to Esteros, we didn't go everywhere. We just went to some of the places in Esteros before we went back to Westeros for the main for the main framework of the narrative.
Yeah.
So
You mean
I don't know.
Essos. There's no
Essos. Yeah, that's what I meant.
But yeah,
Well,
we know what you meant.
I'm curious, and because my curiosity and my imagination have a tendency to run away with me, I like to play with speculations as much as I can.
No, a lot of people are speculating about the Blue Wizards as well. A lot of our colleagues on YouTube have made videos about them, speculating about that very issue. And so there certainly seems to be a buzz in the fandom about that potentially being something that could be seen. I personally, could be good, but I'm not like massively enthused by the idea. Just because the writings are so threadbare on the Blue Wizards, and because there are conflicting versions of the story.
That's fair.
But
I would rather
races come into play, right? Because they are Maiar, and there's no other. I mean, Sauron. Okay, he's the other Maiar, but it could be cool because you could get more powerful beings than otherwise the elves and the Númenóreans would be on top. So
here's a question for you. We'll almost certainly see Elrond because in the synopsis there were references to familiar characters, and he's one of the most familiar, and he's pretty key to a lot of the story points in the Second Age. Yeah. Do you think that we'll see his twin brother?
Yes, I would imagine so, but I would definitely imagine so. I don't know whether they're going to start their storytelling with the creation of Númenor, or they're going to focus on the downfall of Númenor. But there's always the ability to have a flashback. Lots of flashbacks. Peter Jackson did it all the bloody time. But I think that the main focus of 5 seasons should be the establishment of the Elven kingdoms and the war of elves and Sauron after the forging of the rings, and then the downfall of Númenor. But that's just thousands of years. How are you going to cram all that into 5 seasons? I will add one extra thought. I would rather see 2 blue wizards that would appear in the Second Age if Tolkien speculated that way, than to have, Curanir and Olarin show up in the Second Age when they're not supposed to show up in the Second Age at all. Yeah, sure. I would much rather not have that. So but go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I agree. I forgot. Oh no, I wanted to say when they start with the forging of the rings, it's in the year 1560 whatever. So the start of Númenor is in the year 32, so they're still 1,500 years before that. I think if they show, just to answer Dan's question, and I mean he lived for 400 years, Elros, but so that would be the year 432-ish. So I think
they are 400 fairly uneventful years as well, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, but I think it will be a flashback of
It would be an interesting way to explore the issue of elvish immortality versus human mortality, though.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking too. A flashback for Elros. Yeah,
but it's a long time span. You can't forward 1,500 years, and a lot happened in Númenor. I mean, I have I have so many videos on that. Like all the kings getting greedier, and Silmarillion getting effed over. She should be the ruling queen. Just saying, justice for Silmarillion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do they can't skip over 1,000, even if it's then just 1,200 years. They can't fast forward that. And I think the forging of the rings is where it starts. That's they could make a cool intro, like Galadriel in the movies was telling us a story of the War of the Last Alliance and the forging of the rings. They could do something like that let it be one episode, and then start in the year 1,500-ish, and then
it's a 2-part pilot, isn't it? That they've just already filmed.
2-part pilot.
So we believe. So maybe that'll be something.
That
takes place in an earlier era of the Second Age.
Yeah.
There's also been speculation about whether we're going to see the War of Wrath Can't imagine.
Yes.
But they don't have a license. We'll start with they don't have a license for that. But if they did, at least we would see kind of like the opening 7 minutes of Fellowship of the Ring, where Galadriel is so gracious and generous in explaining to us how we're all got to where we got. So maybe there's going to be 7 minutes in the opening of episode 1 that explains why the Blue Mountains are now the West Coast.
Yeah. What a bit, the map changed a little bit, people.
Well, we know we're going to be seeing Lindon, and it's definitely relevant, isn't it?
Yes.
It's there. Now, that's interesting. I thought that was the most interesting part. The synopsis doesn't say boo about characters, but it has a lot to say about geographic places. That was interesting, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that reading
cool.
in between the lines of the furthest reaches of the maps, that bit was the most interesting part of the whole thing. It's really the only very interesting part of the whole thing, I think.
But it is interesting, like, what do people are interested in Sauron, but they're also interested in Mordor. How did Mordor look? This is what people literally Google, right? Like, and so I do think explaining us those regions and the cities and their history is so, yes, character development, please, but I do think that is also so cool, because this was so important, because the Numenoreans went there and built all these colonies. You can bring on topics like colonization, like
yes, that's a big one. That's a big one.
In our time, this is our heritage we have to question, and that would be a cool topic. Like, what was the Numenoreans came as teachers and then became greedier, and literally, they no longer were teachers, they were rulers over these colonies all of a sudden.
Yes, you're right. And that fuels the motivation of Sauron, because it was their advancement across Middle-earth. And the fact that they were improving and strengthening the lives of men, teaching them irrigation, bringing them advanced skills, tools, weaponry.
Them basically
they were industrializing as well. I mean, they chopped down a crap load of forests in the south of Eriador to build their navy.
You're right. The Numenoreans are going to be guilty of deforestation as much as they're guilty of as much as they're guilty of
as well. They took slaves, the Numenoreans, the Black Numenoreans.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's so much stuff, but for Sauron to have that much resentment and fear, literally, Tolkien describes his fear of the Numenoreans and how they're, puttering around and doing other things. That's wonderful stuff for the TV series. And if you're going to call the TV series The Lord of the Rings, then we might as well get right down into the nuts and bolts of Anatar, Sauron, and stick with him as a character for a long time. It's in the book. It doesn't require much, imaginative making up stuff out of raw nothing. I really do hope they stick with it in that regard.
Also, being very girly here, I just want to see hot Sauron, please. Like, give me hot Sauron, please. I just want to, please, everybody follow. There's a Twitter account, and his name is Hot Sauron, and he.
I gotta do it.
This Twitter account is going to be blowing up now, because we mentioned it on Helen's channel the other day.
I love it.
This guy's going to be getting loads of new followers, and he's going to be wondering why.
There's a girl on the internet talking about you. It's me.
I'm all for it. It's great.
Who would you like to see cast as Sauron? Because that would be one of the key things that I think they need to get right in the casting. Actually, who would you like?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't even know.
Out of the current cast, or people that are unannounced, even.
Well, they're holding close to their vest all the big names, the biggest names, like Russell Crowe, blah blah blah, which is because they want to cast people like that, so that the average Joe, who's not really that interested in your family, will want to sit down with you and watch with you on the couch. So, wow, who would I like to see? Well, we're talking about a Tom Hiddleston level of character who's going to be everyone's favorite. Everyone's going to love this mischief-making, troublesome Anatar. Everyone's going to love him.
You can't have him because he's already Loki, so...
You can't have Tom Hiddleston, but gosh, I don't know. You can say what you will about the ins and outs of Peter Jackson's adaptation of his 6 films, but their choices in casting were brilliant all the way down the line. Not a bad job, from Mikael Persbrandt as Beorn right on down to David Wenham as Faramir, to of course Sir Ian McKellen and everyone within that range. Excellent casting. So this is the biggest question, and I dare not speculate. Who would I like to see?
But you think it's somebody on the Russell Crowe? So you think it's one of the more well-known actors and not one of the ones we already got introduced?
Exactly. I think it's going to be some very, very large contract level A-lister that we don't even know yet. Okay. That's my speculation.
I like Jude Law. Can we have Jude Law with hair? Is that like, I think he's too old now.
Why with hair?
No.
I watch people without hair can be handsome.
I watch Jude Law on that HBO show, The New Pope.
Yes.
Which is extraordinary. And I watch that show and I think, yes, he could. He could be your Anatar. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I like that. But what if they do something wild and cast an unknown person so that we are the fan audience who has never seen anything but a flaming eye on a tower and, my friend Salah Baker inside a big suit of armor. That's all we've ever seen. So they could do something quite surprising and let somebody be a blank canvas so that we can project everything onto that blank canvas as an audience.
Nobody knew really of Viggo Mortensen before, and he's Aragorn, I like him better than Book Aragorn. Book Aragorn is no. Come on, yeah.
I love it. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I could speculate, I like that you're going in that direction of Jude Law. I'm very fond of Riz Ahmed. Very fond of him. And who is he? Who is Riz Ahmed? If you saw Rogue One, you've seen him. You've seen him in Rogue One. He was the pilot who was he was tortured by Forrest Whitaker, by that blob creature, and gave the information that the Empire had. He was passing information along and ended up being part of the crew. I would like to see someone like him. Yep, absolutely. He's in a brand new film, an extraordinary new film about a rock and roll drummer who's dealing with deafness and losing his hearing. And it's a really great
rock and roll world.
Yeah. I'm all about that. What if it's just somebody that is a little bit off the beaten path, and we've seen them in a couple of shows, but maybe it's not going to be an Oscar-winning Daniel Day-Lewis. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be a.
Oh, he's too old.
Quit. He quit acting. Yes.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He did. He quit.
How about Ed Skrein, who played the villain in Deadpool? I think he might be interesting.
I love that you mentioned Ed. I met him at the comic book store when he was buying all of his research comics when he got cast in the role.
Really?
He came in, and that was where I was doing a simple Tuesday show for the OneRing.net.
Do you know he used to be a UK rapper?
Yes, that's right.
I've never met him, but I do know people that know him through that scene.
Yes,
which is strange.
Ed was cast in the Deadpool role, and he came in, and I was finishing a broadcast for the OneRing.net, and he got into a conversation. He was buying this whole stack of Deadpool graphic novels and books. He wanted to do his research. So yeah, he's awesome. That would be great. Oh gosh, who else could be good? Don't do this to me.
Who's hot? I just want to repeat this. Hot Sauron. I mean, he was
Okay.
literally so beautiful. He portrayed, this is what Tolkien says, he was so beautiful. I mean, okay. I mean,
You're right.
obviously
You're right.
tastes
Yeah,
differ.
it's subjective, Helen. Some people like bald men.
Hold on. Who is Rocket Man himself?
Elton John.
Taron Egerton. Taron Egerton. John, yeah. So John, I mean, why not Taron Egerton?
He's hot.
Maybe.
Yes.
As Anatar. I don't know.
Yeah.
How about oh gosh, I don't know. I don't want this to this to be you know what? I'll put it like this. I want to be surprised.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When the casting announcements come, I want to be thrilled at the surprise of who they cast.
That's if you're not telling us who they are before the Amazon Studios tell us. That is, of course. But
if I have my network of cats out there collecting information for me.
Spy cats, yeah.
Coming to spy for me, yes.
But who's the one white cat that spies on all the other cats?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's hilarious. I love it.
I'm just Googling hot male actors and I don't find anyone. Oh, yeah. They're all too old. I mean, I like fussy. I mean, actor-wise, Michael Fassbender, not just because he's not German, but he is but then he's Magneto. But
he's somebody I thought of before.
Everywhere. So I like somebody like Michael Fassbender. He could play this, seduction of and
I could also, I could definitely see him as a Númenórean king as well, because he's quite tall as well.
I love that idea, Michael Fassbender. That sounds wonderful.
I think he's a fine actor as well. He's a very good actor.
Yeah,
he is.
I just want Morgan Freeman as a really old Númenórean king. Like, I would love that with like in one of those pictures with that beard, and they have like cool stuff. And like I don't know, mix between Genghis Khan and I don't know what, but that would be cool. Morgan Freeman cast, please.
You can imagine Ar-Pharazôn as being afraid of his mortality, and he's older, and Sauron plays that for part of his manipulation, because of Ar-Pharazôn's difficulty in accepting his own mortality. So he should be older. He should be older and look older, so that we can feel the weight of his metaphysical concerns.
Ar-Pharazôn is another character that they really need to get right as well, because he's quite a complex, interesting character, because he has a gradual decline, and he's almost a microcosm of the gradual decline of Númenórean society in his lifetime. But we need to see him age. We need to see him age as well, because we need to see him capture Sauron in the first place, and then we need to see old him who is scared of death as well.
And you need like people like Kai Burns of A Song of Ice and Fire, right? Trying to find the potion to immortality. Like, how cool is that to show that on screen? Because that's what they did. He had people working on, he had physicians, doctors, whatnot, working on finding the key to immortality in Númenor.
I would like to see Jamie Bell as Elendil.
Oh,
I would like to see Jamie Bell as Elendil. I would.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, that line. We need that line as well. The faithful, right?
Mm-hmm. As long as you have your Ar-Pharazôn, you're going to need a huge counterpoint. We would like to see who Anarion and Elendil will be.
Yeah.
So
you need faithful. Yeah. Oh man,
we have so much in front of us. We have so much in front of us to speculate on. Look, I love it.
Because we will never lack material from now on, Cliff.
That's true. Can I please come back and share more of this? This is such a joy. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. Can I come back hopefully sometime? And
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're welcome.
we can
back
talk some
anytime.
more. I'd love that.
I've got a long list of people that I want to try and interview, and not all of them reply to my emails. So I'm sure we'll be inviting you back again.
On my channel as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm coming. I'm coming to you. Anybody who will have me. And equally wonderful is that you are welcome to come in if it's not too late in the evening. You're more than welcome to come into our Torn Tuesday and bounce into the show, and let's prattle like we're having a drink at the Green Dragon, and we're sitting at the back table, and we're talking about the size of our pumpkins. And I want you to come in, and I want you to be polishing your pumpkin, going, it's my pumpkin. I want you to do that. Please do.
No.
We can do that sometime. That'd be fun. What time
is it? Like EST, what time?
Well, it would be 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, because we broadcast for the primetime hour for East Coast, and I believe that starts us at 10 p.m. London time. Ooh.
No, 8 EST would be my 2 a.m. in Germany.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
1 a.m. here.
And you're 1 a.m. Yeah. So when I'm on holiday, or I'll have the next day off, or don't have calls at 8 a.m.
Okay.
I would love to. No, I think you see our passion, and this is what we do at both channels. We have these live streams, or not live, but pre-recorded streams, where we just talk about mainly one subject. But we had really cool, like I had Men of the West and Joysten on, and we had a lot of people already on. I think it's cool that this community
lovely
sticks together, and
yes,
because we all share this love and passion. And I've seen a lot of toxic. I think that is an important topic as well. I see people commenting under my videos as well that they love that all of the Tolkien community and Tolkien channels, especially on YouTube, that they seem to be friendly with each other, and we really are. And we
absolutely
each other's videos, and I think this is in Tolkien's what he would have wanted, right? Where I don't care that somebody has the same video out as I am, because we're so different, and it's cool to have 50 Galadriel videos out there. Everybody
yes.
I really think that this community is a very non-toxic community, and we just enjoy talking about this stuff, because in my real life I don't have any. This is what I always tell people. I don't have anybody except my dad who joins me on this. They all think I'm weird.
Oh no. You're wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. And what is weird to me is people who don't talk to me about Middle Earth. That's what's weird. What's weird is when I'm in a room and someone wants to talk about sports or something, and I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, I can, here's a trivia game. There's a trivia game running at the bar, and whenever there's fantasy or science fiction, my friends grab me so I can come up. But when it's time for the sports trivia, they kick my ass out, said I'm not playing on their team. That's we each have our niche. We have our niche, of course.
Yeah, you need a broad palette of different areas of expertise in a quiz, don't you? So everybody has their thing.
Yeah.
Indeed. I would love to have Joysten come and talk on our show sometime. And you're right. There's this interesting cohesion with the other YouTube content creators and the great grandfather clock standing in the room is the OneRing.net. But everybody else has so many other wonderful clocks and cuckoos and little bits and little people who come out and ring the bell on the hour. I love it. And I kind of like that metaphor too. It's a great community that is showing none of the weirdness and the toxicity that we have seen in recent years from a certain Star Wars community. And I'm grateful. I'm very much grateful for that.
Yeah, I slightly worry about some of the people that are involved in some of the more toxic elements of that fandom coming into Lord of the Rings when people coming into the fandom from outside, looking for a fight over certain issues.
Yep. Well, yeah. My producer and co-host has warned me. Yes.
But there are people out there on YouTube who thrive on negativity.
That's true.
And not just on YouTube, but in new media in general.
That is true. It's true. And my goodness, I've been warned. I've been warned over and over again. They're coming for us. So the fact that we're out of the gate early in these healthy conversations that are really invigorating and supporting one another, we are out of the gate early. And I hate to be redundant, but it's very helpful to be a step ahead of those conversations. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because we do have to back each other up as fans. We do.
Yeah. And it's fun to have different opinions, right? Tolkien never said it is 100% like this or 100. This is totally fine. You can think.
That's right.
My hero can be Sam. Your hero can be Frodo. That's totally fine. Let's have a discussion about it, like fans or adults.
Yes.
But don't say this is the truth and you're wrong. No.
Exactly. The fact of the matter is, and you're so right, we do not own this. We don't own it the way that certain fandoms think, oh, I own this. And then they think, I control this. And then the next psychology level is, I can't control this, which takes them to, I hate this.
Anger.
And then, and anger. And then, well, Yoda, listen to Yoda. Listen to Yoda.
That's what I wanted to say,
Listen to Yoda. You're right. But we do support each other, and I'm also interested in supporting the actors and the actresses, because of the new and interesting faces that are now going to appear in Middle-earth. I'm interested in protecting those performers from getting treated the way that Kelly Marie Tran or other actors have been treated in other fandoms. That's part of it too. I'm glad that we're here for that too. Really. Yeah. Indeed.
Well, so I'm going to wrap things up now. Thank you so much, Cliff, for coming on and having a chat with us. It was a pleasure to finally meet you. We've had a couple of false starts in having this conversation starting, but it's been an absolute pleasure and been well worth waiting for. So thank you.
You're very kind to say that. It has been worth waiting for.
And we'll definitely do this again, either on Helen's channel or on mine, or we'll come over onto your.
We will.
What did you call yourselves? The grandfather clock of the Lord of the Rings.
We're the tall grandfather clock standing in the room, just chiming the hour, ding, every hour. I'm in love with Professor Tolkien for a great deal of my life, because of what I've learned about hope against hopelessness, and what I've learned about multiculturalism versus isolationism. And I didn't know it. I was 11 years old when I was reading it, and I did not know how impactful it would be in my worldview. And although I'm not a Catholic, I'm a humanist, I find the most satisfying and beautiful elements of Tolkien storytelling, although they're touched with tragedy and touched with never-ending loss, because there's always the measure of loss for every victory that you have gained. These things make us human, and they help us treat the world with a different regard and treat each other with a better regard. And I think a lot of us are better people because of what Tolkien has brought to us. And now that we can talk about this and share this energy with so many other younglings and oldlings and everybody in between, we do feel like a merry gathering, don't we? We really do.
There are so many times in my life where I thought to myself, what would Samwise Gamgee do?
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely. What were you saying, Helen?
Sorry. Yeah.
We're the Fellowship 2.0.
Yes, we are. We are the Fellowship 2.0. That's fantastic. I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for your time and your patience, because you were very patient with me, my friends, in setting this up. So thank you for everything. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, before we go out, I'm just going to let Helen have a chance to plug whatever she's got going on her channel, because I always do this at the end. So
Yes.
tell us what you've got going on the Clueless Fangirl.
Ooh, so yes, for everybody who asked himself, who is this woman actually? Yes, I'm Helen. You should know me, but I don't know. Yes, I'm Helen from the Clueless Fangirl. I do very fun, mainly first and second age silmarillion content, very deep and nerdy shit, as my fellow geek here would say. And I do fun streams like this as well with the fellow content creators, and I'll have a few of them on in the next time. And I just did what did I do last, Dan? I think you can. I started the Elves series. So I just talked about Vanya and the birth myth of the elves, and why Tolkien actually wrote so little about the Vanya, because I do think I have an explanation for that. And then I'll go on over the Noldor and the Teleri next, and
The
then
Teleri, yes.
yeah, and then I'll start my epic series about places in Middle Earth, and explain regions and cities. And my viewers voted for that. I gave them the option of cool weapons and whatnot, but they wanted regions, so I'll start that next.
I love it. That's great.
And Cliff, one last chance to plug whatever you've got going on the One Ring.
Well, every Tuesday we do our live stream with surprise guests, and sometimes I have a show producer who doesn't even tell me ahead of time what kind of surprises are coming. We have many more articles and news stories on the One Ring, including a pretty interesting piece that we published less than a week ago, recommending all of the Tolkien books and publications that should be thoroughly digested before Amazon Studios starts to really launch their series and bring all that content to us in earnest. And you can follow us at the One Ring Net on various social channels. What I'm looking forward to is another virtual program that we'll do for WonderCon, where we have special guests, panelists, and Tolkien authors who will come and talk about the state of things with Tolkien fans. WonderCon is this coming spring over Easter weekend. And then, like last summer, I got to interview John Garth, who wrote Tolkien and the Great War. I interviewed him.
I know John. He's a man. Yeah, it's great.
He's an extraordinary fellow, extraordinary man. Because we did our San Diego Comic-Con panel presentation virtually last summer with John, and I hope that we can have more people like him lined up for this coming summer. So we have spring and summer convention season coming up, and it's all online for now. So look out for news about that.
Mm-hmm. To get the experience and share it with more. I think that's cool, because, well, we don't know when we can go to real conventions again.
There it is. Yes.
Well, it's so cool. I love it.
It's a great book. A great book. Yeah. And we'll also have a lot of anniversary events coming in 2021, especially the Fellowship of the Ring 20th anniversary, which, combined with some efforts with Amazon Studios and maybe some people at New Line, we might actually have a big thing. We might do a big thing for that. And that'll be in December of the year, months and months from now. But we'll talk about that later.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, and as for me, I'll be back with the Silmarillion Explained series next week as this comes out, and we'll be recommencing with Chapter 13, which is back again with the return of the Noldor in Beleriand, which we've got more dialogue coming back. We've got
No justice for Fëanor.
We've got Yoiston from Men of the West coming in to voice Thingol on my series, so that'll be awesome.
Really, that's cool. Wonderful.
So look out
Wonderful
for that. And
great.
we'll see you again soon with another podcast, hopefully.
Absolutely. My very best to you across thousands and thousands of miles. My best to you both, and thank you again for being so gracious. Thank you.